stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, An Elegant Guide to the Craft of Storytelling by Lani and Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani and Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert and very powerful she-witch, or witch, as is more accurate, Lani Diane Rich.
And I'm film scholar Noelle LaCroix, and I don't have as much blood as other people. And we're here today to talk about Never Leave Me, the 9th episode of Season 7. Never Leave Me aired on November 26th, 2002, and was written by Drew Goddard and directed by David Solomon.
Still Pretty is a fully spoiled, full-spectrum Buffy podcast, so if you haven't seen all of the show, go take care of that, and we'll just walk around for a while in our coats.
I am Willow. I am Death. If you defy me, I will call down my fury, exact fresh vengeance, and make your worst fears come true. Okay? Let's go on patrol. In Never Leave Me, Xander puts his carpenter skills to use, putting the living room back together after the first destruction of Conversations with Dead People. Dawn is asking questions about Spike, and Anya suggests that the standard protocol when someone in the core group starts murdering people is to stab them in the chest, but everyone says that Buffy knows what she's doing. Meanwhile, out in the streets of Sunnydale, the First, as Warren, takes on the role of exposition fairy as he explains the rules to Andrew. He can't take corporeal form, so he needs Andrew to do his dirty work for him. When Andrew balks, the First turns into Jonathan, who explains that Andrew really did him a favor, and it was his fault the ritual didn't work.
I'm little. I don't have as much blood as other people.
At Buffy's, Buffy ties Spike to a chair, and he tells her to tie the ropes tighter. If he gets loose, someone dies. At school, Principal Wood is dealing with a couple of miscreants when Dawn comes to the door to tell him in detail that Buffy has all manner of intestinal distress. Meanwhile, at home, Buffy calls the Watchers Council to ask for help finding Giles. Travers promises to look into it, and when he hangs up, he tells his table full of Watchers that Buffy doesn't know anything and that they need to find Rupert Giles. All of that to hold up a bullshit cliffhanger that we don't need, but whatever! Back at the house, Spike is going through human blood withdrawals, and Buffy sends Willow out to get him some blood from the butchers. In the school basement, the First is trying to talk Andrew through killing a pig and using that blood to open the seal, but it goes exactly how you'd think it would go.
That's the worst attempted pig slaughtering I've ever seen.
At the butcher's, Willow bumps into Andrew, and he drops his bag full of blood. He runs outside and she chases him, trying to find out what's going on. He tries to tell her he's good now, but when she doesn't buy it, he tells her he's evil and she shouldn't mess with him. She basically rolls her eyes and drags him back to Buffy's, where Xander and Anya have fun playing good cop, bad cop with him. Meanwhile, in the other room, Buffy tries to talk to Spike, but he doesn't remember anything about killing those people. He says time has been wonky since he got his soul back. She asks him how he did it, how he got his soul back, and he says he made a deal with a demon. They talk about their relationship, and he says he finally understands how Buffy hated herself and used him to punish herself.
As bad as I was, as evil and as wretched as I was, I never truly hated myself back then. Not like I do now.
Back in the other room, Xander sits with Andrew and tells him stories of all the men Anya has killed and tortured. When Andrew doesn't talk, Anya starts beating him up, and Buffy leaves Spike to see what's going on. She shuts the door, and first Spike is revealed waiting in the corner. He tells Spike they have a problem. Buffy checks in on Anya and Xander and sees Anya beating up Andrew, but they say they're fine, and Buffy leaves them to it. When she goes back to the other room, she hears Spike talking and singing a tune. When she walks in, she asks him who he was talking to, and he says he was talking to himself. She asks how he's doing, and he says he's fine and asks for more blood. When she goes to get it, he gets free, punches her in the face, and reaches through the wall, grabbing Andrew and biting him in the neck. Buffy pushes Spike away and knocks his head into the wall, and he comes to, no idea what just happened. Downstairs, Buffy says that she heard him talking to himself and singing.
Maybe it's another musical. A much crappier musical.
Buffy remembers that when he was in the murder basement, he was singing then, too, and then he just changed. Xander says it's a trigger, which the military used to create sleeper agents. They'd brainwash them and then trigger them with a phrase or a song that would make them turn into killers. Xander makes the connection to the ghosts, saying they might be controlling him. Buffy gets the team working, finding a way to deactivate the trigger and figuring out what's doing this to Spike. At the school, Robin Wood leaves his office, then goes down into the basement and finds Jonathan's dead body lying on the seal. He doesn't seem surprised. In Buffy's basement, Spike lies on the floor unconscious, chained to the wall. Buffy wipes the blood on his face and he wakes up, asking if he hurt anyone. He tells her he doesn't remember, and she tells him something is controlling him. He asks her to kill him and she refuses. He tells her what he's done, in detail, and accuses her of not being able to kill him because she needs the pain he causes her, the hate he makes her feel. She says no, he's alive because she saw him change.
You faced the monster inside of you and you fought back. You risked everything to be a better man.
Buffy.
And you can be.
And just then, the lights go out and bringers break into the house through every door and window. They knock everyone down and try to kill Andrew. While Buffy is saving his worthless ass, they drag Spike out from the basement and run off with him. Meanwhile, out in an oil yard somewhere, Robin Wood buries Jonathan's body. So that can't be good. Later, the Scoobies realize that the bringers were after Spike all along. But then Buffy looks at one of the bringer bodies and puts some pieces together.
I know what we're up against. First.
In England, the Watchers' Council is in tatters after some kind of paper-throwing attack. Quentin uses his powers of patriarchy to calm the women, then tells his team that their fears have been confirmed. The first evil has declared war on the Watchers' Council, and I completely understand his surprise since the Watchers' Council and the first have clearly been playing on the same side. That's the evil side. The Watchers' Council is fucking evil. Anyway, Quentin says it's time to strike back, and he's in the middle of his speech performing the classic evil move of quoting the Bible to support evil plans, while the whole Watchers' Council blows up in a fiery CGI attack, and, well, I mean, we're sad about that, I guess?
In the school basement, bringers are strapping Spike to wooden beams as they prepare his torture, while first Spike smiles and taunts him as the bringers stab him and make him bleed. First Spike turns into First Buffy as they haul Spike up and bleed him over the devil's manhole. The bringers chant, the manhole opens, and the uber vamp crawls out, and they must have a kickin' hot topic in the underworld because his leather jacket is kinda fab. But he's also really scary and growly and shit.
The devil's manhole is a phrase that is evocative of so many things. I just, need a moment. I just need a moment to recover.
But I mean, it kind of is the devil's manhole, right?
It kind of is, and what I love is that it's clearly, there's, hydraulics in it? Question mark? What?
No, it's very...
That's one of my favorite things always in fantasy, horror, whatever, is when there's obvious electronic elements or hydraulics or something in what is supposed to be the ancient seal of someone evil from a long time ago or whatever. You're no, there's pistons and compressed air and this would not happen. Whatever. The things that take us out of fiction are hilarious.
Exactly. Especially out of fantasy fiction with, vampires and shit.
And literal magic, there is literal magic. The world can function in any way you want it to. And I'm no, this is obviously technology that would not, no.
Not only that, but it's steampunky technology. Yes! It's this very analog kind of tech. And it's fun and interesting. But I don't know.
Heavy metal ancient vampire. It's cool. It's cool. We love it.
You know what? It's the devil's manhole. It works how the devil makes it work. I guess fueled by evil, much like the Watchers Council. But anyway, Noelle.
Yes.
My darling.
Yes.
Here we are talking about Never Leave Me. Thank you so much. Also, I just want to say, as I come back from my impromptu, vacation, I guess you would call it, it was really nice to have you and Kelly talking about Sleeper last week. And thank you so much for covering all of that. And my thanks goes to Dr. Kelly Jones. But we ended it with this bullshit, cliffhanger with Giles that, of course, I have to call out because it's a bullshit cliffhanger. And here we are now in Never Leave Me. And what do you think? What do you think of this episode?
I mean, this is advancing the storyline stuff, and it's fine. It doesn't give me a lot of strong feelings, except when we get to Spike talking about his experience of having a soul, and then my brain lights up. But
I love that.
The advancing the story stuff is fine. We need to do it. That's kind of where we are in the season, and this season is all about advancing the story.
Yeah, episode 9 is usually a grinder. About this time, we start getting into our episodes that sort of just keep things moving and give us a little bit more information. And this really is the turning point of the season. I mean, this is the episode where we name the first, which is great. But we also make it corporeal in the sense that it controls things that are corporeal, that we get this uber vamp that can fight for it. And I think that kind of messes up what makes this season so great, or what had so much potential so far, that we were playing on a psychological battlefield, not a physical one, where all of Buffy's advantages are evened out, but now we're back to physical, and it's kind of disappointing. I'm always I really liked what the first was doing. I liked what it was doing back in Amends when we first saw it, and the idea that we're using this evil, taking this opportunity to come back, and that it's fucking with everybody psychologically, that just that was so cool. And I really, really love that potential. And, you can't sit there and just, wah about what they didn't do, right? You got to work with what they did. But I'm just taking a moment here to mourn what might have been, because I really liked what they were setting up. But one of the things, though, that this episode kind of talks about in one of the areas where it talks about this is this moment with Buffy and Spike where he is now understanding violence through self-hate.
Yeah. This is
what
so
did you think
compelling.
about that?
This is so compelling. This is one of the things where I go, oh, there's a little bit more here than I think we get kind of on the surface, because Spike. So the stuff with Spike lately has been fascinating as he grapples with having a soul and what that means. And he tells Buffy he understands violence now, which she scoffs at, of course, because hello, right. William the Bloody, right? Spike says, soul's not all about moonbeams and penny whistles, love. It's about self-loathing. I get it. And he says, I never truly hated myself back then, meaning when he was William the Bloody. Not like I do now. And this idea of truly understanding violence through self-hate, through self-loathing, is a fascinating concept to me.
Yeah.
It resonated with me right away, but I couldn't say exactly why. So I went digging a little bit.
I love it.
Because we usually think of violence in the death and destruction sense, right? The use of physical force to damage, destroy, and so on. But violence can also refer to clashing in the sense of discordance. So a lack of harmony, concepts being out of alignment. And I think that dovetails with self-hate really nicely. Yeah. Because self-hate can come from the experience of discordance within oneself. And often that experience is based on a false premise. For example, if my desires don't match the dominant cultural narrative prescribed for someone of my race, class, or gender, I can end up feeling out of alignment and hating myself when it's really the cultural prescriptions that are the problem.
Right.
But there's also the self-hate that arises from an awareness of having acted in ways that are discordant with one's true self, for lack of a better phrase, or believing that one's true self is irredeemable. And I think that's where Spike is hanging out with the violence of self-hate here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is hashtag new soul problems, but Spike sees his vampire past as an insurmountable blight on his permanent record. Which I think is why we have that odd little exchange between Principal Wood and the students in his office about permanent records. A violation might be recorded in your permanent record, but no one ever actually asks for that permanent record.
Mm-hmm.
You can really acknowledge the wrongdoing, make amends, paint over the wall, and move on.
Yeah.
And obviously torturing and killing a whole bunch of people is not the same as a little high school graffiti, but a theme is a theme. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer is not a subtle show.
No. That's true. I love that. I have never seen that permanent record thing in the beginning. Always felt to me like just an opportunity to show off D.B. Woodside's tremendous charm.
Yeah. And it is.
So, and I've always
he is
liked
charismatic
it.
megafauna. He is not playing on the same level as the rest of us. He is a delight. Yeah. It is 100% that. And this idea about the permanent record being something that never actually comes up again is fascinating in the context of Spike holding himself accountable for all of these things that he did as a soulless vampire that he now not only remembers, but like remembers the emotional weight of that he didn't feel at the time. And he reads that, Spike reads that as this is on my permanent record, essentially, and I will never be beyond that.
Well, and the idea, too, that the soul, which is a very complicated concept with any relationship to, you know, good and evil.
Yeah.
You know, we've had this complication where we're like, well, you know, Warren and Andrew and Jonathan had souls and look what they did. They were terrible. And we see all sorts of human horror, you know, throughout Buffy, terrible things that are done by people with souls. And then we have Spike saying the soul is not about, you know, moonbeams and penny whistles. It's about self-loathing, that the soul brings in the space for you to feel bad about what you've done. And also, like, this idea of the permanent record, God, I love that you brought that in. I hadn't really ever thought about that. But the permanent record is something that, you know, we feel all of the things that we do, right? That we feel bad about. I can tell you there are things I said 20 years ago that when I remember them, I fucking cringe.
Yup.
And I'm like, oh my God, so stupid, so dumb, so horrible. Why, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it bothers me. I actually had an instance like that where I had said something once as part of a group that had been later on, you know, disbanded and nobody made a big deal out of it. But later on, I had realized how fucking, like, it honestly is one of the things of which I am most ashamed in my life, the shit that I said in that group at that time in my life, the stuff that I believed. And, you know, some years later, this group kind of found each other on Facebook and they invited me in. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell you the details of what I said because what I said was really, really awful and nobody should have to live through that again. But I'm really, really sorry. And I know I'm an asshole. And I just want everybody who might have been offended by what I said to know that. And every single one of them to a person was like, we have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
Right.
And I was like, no, but I was so awful. And this has been haunting me for years. And how is it that you think of me and you don't think, oh my God, that bitch, right? You know, like, how is that even possible that you don't hold this against me, but I do? We have our permanent record, and the idea of the soul being the access point to that permanent record, giving us the opportunity to care about it or not. I find really, really interesting. So yeah, I love that. And I love that it makes something, you know, thematically resonant out of what I thought was just a charmer scene.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, everything in fiction is a decision. And sometimes it's a decision that doesn't quite fit. But it's such an interesting, this is such a fascinating aspect of what Spike is going through to me.
Yeah.
Which is that, he did a bunch of really awful stuff. And he goes into some detail about some awful stuff he did. And it's truly awful. And what I love is that Buffy has so much grace for someone who is interested in redemption.
Yes.
Like, that is the thing that I find so fascinating, that you really can. And I believe this about people. Yeah. I believe that, we all, first of all, we've all done harmful things. We just it is part of being human. We have caused harm, whether we intended to or not. Which is, again, really interesting in the context of Spike being a vampire. But of course, he started out as a human. There's a whole thing here.
It's so complicated.
There's a whole thing here, right? But the bottom line for Buffy, and we'll get there, a little later when we get there, is that wanting that redemption, wanting that opportunity to make amends is the most important thing. And I believe this as well, that we can do really harmful things and be forgiven, not in the, hey, it's okay, no big deal that you tortured and killed a bunch of people. Like, that's fine. But there's a big difference between acknowledging wrongdoing and promising to move forward in a different direction and never acknowledging the harm or celebrating the harm or not not possessing that desire to be redeemed. It's really crunchy. It's really good.
It is really interesting. And redemption itself, I mean, as a theme throughout Buffy, is something that I think Angel kind of picked up and took with it when it, started its own show. This idea, Angel has said over on the other show that there is no point at which you're done. There is no point at which you're forgiven. There is no point, but that you spend every day working within that framework of redemption, knowing that you can never be redeemed, that you can never undo what you did. And the fact that you can't undo it if you've done enough harm, like, that ends up becoming part of that experience. And the idea that you fight to do good and to make a difference and to not do those things ever again, not because it's going to get wiped clean, not because your permanent record is ever not going to haunt you, but just because what else are you going to do? You're here, you got to exist in the world, go exist in the world in a way that makes it better from here on out. And I find that a really interesting idea. And of course, it comes back to that classic line from Angel, if nothing we do matters, then all that matters is what we do, which is one of my favorite pieces of philosophy ever.
Yeah,
I think it's
fantastic.
Wonderful. Yeah. And it's so incredibly powerful and I love it so much. But I mean, that's kind of what this comes down to. And I I personally believe very strongly in redemption for people who are truly sorry and who don't intend to do the same things, and this is something too that Buffy has always been about, and it's not just with Spike, it's with the second a monster cannot do any more harm, the second, a monster stops doing harm, Buffy lets them live. She's not about retribution. She's not about vengeance. She's about protection. And Spike with his chip, when he couldn't hurt people anymore, she was like, okay, then you're allowed to live. You're allowed to stay as long as you're not going to hurt people anymore, and I always find that really interesting too, because that is something that, when you think about the Slayer and what that job is, Buffy sees it very much as a role of protection and does not want to kill anything that she does not have to kill.
Well, and she tells Spike she's not motivated by hate.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate.
So this episode really is, moving pieces around the board. We're doing a lot of, this is where Andrew gets pulled into the gang for better or worse. We have Anya, who is fully integrated. We have Spike, who gets moved into the house, then pulled into the school basement where he bleeds into the seal. And, and then we have like the first as one of the things that drives me crazy about all of this moving around the chessboard and everything that we're doing is that really it's just dicking around. Like the thing is that the first was there, the bringers were there. Any one of those bringers would happily slice his wrist open if the first wanted him to and just bleed it all over that seal and open it up. And yet we're dicking around with Andrew. We got to bring Andrew back. Now, I love Andrew and I love Tom Lenk, and I think he is sweet and charming, and I absolutely adore Andrew as a character, as troublesome as he is. I do enjoy him, mostly because of Tom Lenk's charm, I think, and sense of humor. But why do we need to dress up as Warren and get Andrew and Jonathan back from Mexico and then try to kill the pig and then all of this stuff when the reality of it is we don't even need Spike. Like, it's not like a particular kind of blood. They were going to be happy with pig's blood. They could have you could have sent a bringer down to the butcher with a 10 spot, taking care of all of this. And yet we have to do like all of this, moving around. And it's how we got Andrew back in town and yada, yada. But it's so inefficient. And the thing that irritates me about inefficient antagonists is that if you look at a lot of antagonists from the perspective of the antagonist, the big question is, and why? Like, what is this? Why? It's a lot of energy wasted. Just get to it. If you want the Uber vamp out, go ahead and unlock it. You have a million ways to do that, and yet we're monkeying around with Warren as the first and Andrew and Jonathan, the first Jonathan and all of that kind of stuff. It always irritates me, and it's a tiny little thing and whatever, because it's not a big deal, but it's just like when you're writing an antagonist, look at things from the antagonist's point of view and be sure that this is the most efficient way to their goal. They're just wandering around, dicking around because we need to move all of our puzzle pieces to get Spike in the basement first. I don't know.
Because theater, we need to do it. That's like a production value. It's not. Is it really? Are you really evil if there's not production value and
I just want
a Catherine wheel and the whole thing. Like, come on.
I want there to be a reason why it had to be Jonathan. I want there to be a reason why it had to be Spike. I want there to be something that there's a reason why the first is putting all of this energy into not just Andrew and Jonathan. If Andrew and Jonathan were just hanging out in the corner, grabbing them and being like, okay, let's have some fun and fuck with these guys. All right, fine. But these guys were in Mexico. Like, we're going to see that backstory and storyteller that they were just hanging out in Mexico and then the first went and got them there. Like, why? Anyway, it's silly, but it drives me crazy. That's the kind of the purpose of this episode, and it gets us Andrew. It gets us this conflict between Andrew and Willow in the alley outside the butchers. Yeah. Which I fucking love. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk a bit about Andrew, because he is a complicated fave for me.
He's a complicated fave. He's a problematic fave. I love Andrew. Yeah. I spend a lot of this episode trying to unpack my love of Andrew a little bit more, because oh my god, Andrew, it's not my fault. I didn't do anything. Grab your water bottle, take a drink every time he says one of these, and baby, you will be hydrated. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. Don't blame me. It's Andrew's mantra. And it also suggests that he's still living in the world of storytelling and play acting. Because he absolutely did things.
Yes.
Absolutely, unquestionably did things. But to Andrew, it seems like there's this huge gulf between what he does and who he is, at least in his own imagination. Right. He's like, can't I just walk around for a while in my coat? Like, is Andrew, Andrew is cosplaying as Spike.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
It's so great, but it's also just like he is in a costume in that out. Like he's in a costume in the world of the show, and he's very cognizant of that.
Well, he's got a bad case of narrativitis. You know, everything is a story with him, right? Everything is from a movie, or it's from like, he doesn't see anything through the lens of the real world. And we get this beautifully, beautifully displayed in Storyteller, which I cannot wait for. It's going to be such a great conversation. But I love, though, how contagious Andrew's narrativitis is, because a few moments in his presence and Anya's playing classic movie roles. The weasel wants to sing. He just needs a tune. You know, it's like this whole, it's so incredibly adorable. And Anya and Andrew is a relationship that I kind of love as we move forward through the season. It's really, really fun seeing them together. But she catches his narrativitis hard.
Well, and they're an interesting match because they both have this kind of like, I want to be part of the group, but I need this framework for how you do that. Like I almost they almost need a literal script, like from a movie or television show to interact with the world. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And we also get yet another reprise of the no one knows Andrew's name running gag in this episode. Dawn refers to him as what's his name. Buffy tells Spike he took a chunk out of Andrew, and Spike says, who? To which Buffy replies, Tucker's brother.
Which is a reference that Spike would have no context for that. He doesn't know who Tucker is.
But what I love is that satisfies Spike. There's no follow-up.
Exactly.
Because
there's no who's Tucker.
There's no who's Tucker. It's just, okay, cool. Like, I got you. And when the first tells Spike, you're the one who couldn't take care of what's his name, is he talking about Andrew? Does the first
I guess so.
not know Andrew's name? Because that's hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder if Warren definitely calls Andrew by his name.
Yes. But the first as Spike doesn't know.
The first as Spike doesn't.
That is an interesting thing about the first, too.
The first is very interesting.
The first embodies whomever it's embodying, which is circular logic, I realize, but that's fascinating. But it is a little bit of it feels like a 3-beat on the nobody knows Andrew's name gag.
Yeah.
And what I like about no one knowing Andrew's name is the subtle suggestion that evil isn't who Andrew really is. He literally cannot make a name for himself as a villain.
Yeah.
Like when he is a villain, when he is acting as a villain, he truly is acting. He is playing a role that is not authentic to who he is. Now, this is where the intent doesn't matter, impact matters conversation happens, right?
Yes.
But it is fascinating to me that despite the undeniable reality of Andrew's actions, Andrew and the people around him see his evil as a role he is playing and not playing well enough to have a name associated with it.
Yeah.
That's oddly powerful.
Well, yeah, that he does really terrible things. And he absolutely, when he says, I didn't do anything, that is a lie. You know, that is a lie. But he doesn't seem to either hold himself responsible for it or be held responsible for it by anybody else because of his lack of capability, because he's an incompetent villain.
Yeah.
You know, like we don't take him too seriously. And the thing is that incompetence can do just as much, if not more damage, you know?
Right.
So I find that really interesting. I also I don't even know if bored is the right answer or is the right word for it, because it also irritates me with this. The big joke with Andrew is gay, but he doesn't know that he's gay. And I find that so tiresome. I find it so tiresome. so I don't know, like that moment where he's like Patrick Swayze and we have that beat and it's,
Yeah.
and the thing is, and again, and this sucks because I hate when this happens, terrible joke, but Tom Lank's fucking delivery is genius and it's still funny. And I hate that it's that, you know what I'm saying? That like his delivery, his playing of it makes things funny that I don't think are funny and I don't like.
His obvious discomfort
that.
in the butcher shop. And then, and trying to play it cool like he belongs there. And then, ooh, steak sauce. Like, it's so, what is happening? But yeah, the Andrew is gay and doesn't know he's gay joke is, it's problematic.
It bothers
to say the
me
least.
because it's not a joke, and like how people come out, how people understand their own sexuality is like deeply personal and not funny. And it's just that Tom Lank makes everything funny, and then I get mad at him making me laugh at things that I don't like. It's terrible, and I feel shame.
I feel shame about what I laugh at.
I feel shame about bad jokes making me laugh. It's like in Him, I felt shame because they were terrible, terrible, terrible jokes, but they were funny because they were well constructed, and I resent that. Anyway, I love Anya. I am uncomplicated in my love for Anya. I love when she gets carried away and slaps Xander and then mouths, "I'm sorry," because she doesn't want to break character. I love the way she beats up on Andrew and just plays her role. She is committed. I love seeing her and Xander work well together. I mean, that's what builds a great relationship, and I actually like them so much better broken up than I liked them when they were together. I love her line, "Shouldn't we stab him through the chest? Isn't that what we do when these things happen?"
Yep.
About Spike.
Salty.
I
love it.
Oh my God.
Love it.
Anya is possibly one of my favorite things about this episode.
She's so good. She's almost always just so good.
Yeah,
but yeah, Anya catching narrativitis from Andrew is one of my favorite things. And then just going for it. Just leaning in. It's great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh my God. I love it so much. One of the things that I like less in this, as much as I love DB Woodside, I mean, and when I say I love DB Woodside, like it's almost unhealthy, like how much I love this man, how much this actor makes me happy. He is so incredibly charming. He is so fun. We haven't gotten to the really, really good stuff for him yet.
Yeah.
But here we are once again, like, I hated that cliffhanger last week with Giles. That is completely unnecessary. And here we get this stupid misdirect with Principal Wood. He is not shocked to see Jonathan's body on the seal. He clearly isn't shocked to see the seal. And he just carefully takes Jonathan and then buries him out in the oil yard where nobody will find him. And we don't really address that. It is a misdirect so that we think he's evil, so that we have that moment when we get to first date and we're worried about Buffy being out on a date with this guy. And is he evil or is he not? And how do we know? And yada, yada, yada. When the fact is, it's just stupid. Like, if you're gonna sit there and show me him working with the first and cleaning up after the first, and I know they have some kind of, I don't remember what it is, there's some kind of lame nod to that at some point, but no, I hate that whole thing that we're worried about Principal Wood being evil. It just irritates me.
The sneaking around in the school at night with the like plink, 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 plink sneaky music. I'm just, come on.
Because we know that's not who he is. So it's just this moment where they're like, oh, and again, like, I'll say it again to the writers out there. Don't do anything that when we go back and look at it again, knowing the full story doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, don't do that shit. I hate that. So anyway, that's enough irritation about that because it was only a few minutes in the episode. And then, we get to the Spike stuff, which I love. There's a lot of pieces moving around on the board, but the Spike stuff I feel grounded in story and character, and I get lost in the moment, which I really, really love. I love the "I believe in you" conversation with Buffy. I love the way he struggles so much to say, you like men who hurt you, but you know he believes it. And the look on his face when she proclaims her faith in him, it is amazing. But I think I love I love when he says, you have to kill me, which honestly is like maybe the right move. I mean, the first is using him without Spike. The first loses a powerful weapon, but she won't do it because more than the fight, she values the chance that he can be better, the chance that he can be redeemed. And it's amazing, especially because it comes on the heels. I mean, remember we were having the discussion in Seeing Red, and I said that Spike is a rapist, and there was some question about whether or not Spike was actually a rapist. I think this episode puts that question to rest, the way that he talks about what he's done. Yeah.
It definitely reads that way to me as well, that there's certainly, it's certainly not just feeding on young girls, it is also torturing them, and because of the way that Spike is Spike, there's definitely, I read a sexual violence angle to that.
I mean, absolutely. I think so. And so, but here we have, he is trying to say, kill me, you have to kill me, I'm too dangerous, Right. He is ready to lay down his life, and she says no.
Yeah.
Because more important than anything is that if somebody wants to be redeemed and if somebody wants to be forgiven, that they get that opportunity. And it's such a small moment, and I mean, this whole thing, like people could say, oh, she gave him the chance because she's hot for him, or because, he's Spike and he has light armor, and all of that may be true, but I really think that this is a moment that speaks to the importance, the vital importance of the opportunity for redemption, of the opportunity for people to do better, to make up for what they've done.
Yeah.
And that giving people that opportunity, the people who want it, I think it is so incredibly important to be able to do that. And, I recently watched the movie Dead Man Walking, about the death penalty. And there are a lot of reasons why I think that the state has no business being in the murder game. But aside from that, I think that where there is life, there is opportunity for redemption. There's opportunity to be better. And taking away that opportunity from someone for any reason other than they are actively trying to kill somebody right now, they pose a danger of killing people, which I think actually is the case here. Spike poses that danger, but Buffy thinks she can control it. But the idea that redemption is more important than anything. That the ability to be a good man, you have goodness. I've seen it. You can do this. And that is why I'm not going to kill you. I find that to be so incredibly powerful. And we move through that because then the bringers, crack in and everything, gets all thrown to hell. But that moment itself, I think there's such power in it. We look at it as this romantic moment between Buffy and Spike because I believe in you and you can be, and all that. But I think more for me, what it says is that there's very little in the world that is more important than the opportunity for people to grow and be better and do better and improve and get redemption. That we need to have that opportunity available to everyone for as long as we possibly can. Not without reason. If somebody's dangerous, they should be in jail, but only if they are dangerous should they be in jail. Only if they're going to hurt people should they be in jail. And that is how we control it, but not killing them, And so I kind of love that choice in that moment here.
Well, and what I love is the line that she gives him, which is, I saw you change, which, who boy, is that a loaded statement. But it comes in the context of this conversation that they're having about Spike's understanding of himself versus Buffy's understanding of who Spike is. He says, Buffy, you've never seen the real me, which is a fascinating thing to say because it suggests that to Spike, his vampire self is more real than his human self. I think that's what, based on the context, I think that's what he's talking about, because then he goes on to talk about, what he believes to be the truth about himself. you know, because it's not worth it if they don't cry. But that's the truth about his actions.
Mm-hmm.
And Buffy's not having it because Buffy, we've talked about this. Buffy believes in the power of change and redemption. But I saw you change there's a lot going on there. She sees him change from human to vamp face and back. She sees him change when the first is influencing him. That's one of the things that when she starts to put the pieces together about what's going on with Spike, she's articulating to the group, you know, he was like, I went back in and he was different. So she's noticing all of these subtle changes in his affect and his demeanor. She's paying attention to what is different about Spike. And then, you know, and on top of everything, he has a soul and he has explained to her, you know, what that was about. And she's seen the effect of that. You know, she has seen, you know, I saw you change in I hear what you have said to me about what you did and why, in terms of getting a soul back. It's so complicated because it intersects with Spike's understanding of who he is, what it means to change, and also memory, because he doesn't remember what he does when he's under the influence of the first. Buffy does. So it's almost this little backwards I saw you change, in that he knows that when he's under the influence of whatever this is that's influencing him, he is causing harm. He doesn't remember that harm. He remembers all of the harm that he inflicted prior, right? Because he's remembering, that is the punishment of having the soul, is he now remembers and feels the emotional weight of all of the torture and murder that he did in his past, but he doesn't remember what happens when he's under the influence of the first. She sees that. She sees what he is capable of now. And she still says, you are worth saving, which I find fascinating. Yeah. He believes that he is unsafe. And she doesn't. Which is so interesting. I mean, Spike seems to be in Camp Angel with the all that matters is what we do. And Spike is feeling the weight of what he's done in the past and equating it to who he is at his core. This is me, Buffy. You've got to kill me before I get out. Yeah. He believes that whatever this is drawing on something inherently evil in him, which again brings me back to this idea that Spike thinks of his vampire self as somehow more real than his human self. Yeah. And I just don't even know what to do with that. Whereas Buffy's all about the change and redemption and, you know, you got a soul. And yeah, maybe she's also kind of in love with him and doesn't want to acknowledge that. I mean, I enjoy the fact that she says, I do twice in this scene. So I guess they're married now? I don't know. It's great. It's great. But
oh, I love that.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's almost like she is seeing more of his current state and determining that no, she's not going to kill him. And he doesn't remember what he's currently doing when he's vampy and dangerous. I don't know. I don't know entirely where I'm going with this. Just, I find it fascinating. I find this dynamic between them of your life is worthwhile versus who I am at my core is this demon that makes me a vampire. It's so good.
It is. It's really good. It's really complicated, and they're both right. You know, I mean, they're both right. Like he's right. What he's done is terrible, and he's looking to the past, and she's looking to the future. And Buffy always looks to the future. Are you going to stop hurting people? Well, then, okay. You know, It's so interesting and I love it. Okay, but before we move on to the favorite part, which is the next thing in the script, I was looking through your notes and this wasn't something that you wanted to talk about, but I was very curious because is that a Catherine wheel over the seal? And I don't know what a Catherine wheel is, and now I'm curious.
Oh, it's a torture device. It's yeah. I know way too much about olden-timey torture devices.
Is it for Catherine the Great? Is that...
I don't know why it's called the Catherine wheel. Usually it's just called the wheel. But no, I don't. And I honestly, I mentioned it earlier, but I don't think it is. I think, I don't think it's the wheel, and it's not. He's not tortured. Mm-hmm. They're not torturing him by giving him the wheel. That's not how the wheel works. They've strapped him to it to be aesthetically interesting, because we've got to have the mirroring, I guess, of the round shape above the round seal. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Torture.
No, it was just interesting. I was like, I've never heard of a Catherine wheel. Now I'm going to learn something new.
Well, now I want to. Yeah. And honestly, I don't know why it's called the Catherine wheel. I could look it up right now.
I don't know.
I have a pocket computer with me.
Oh, you have all of the world's knowledge?
I have
while
much
you
of the
sit
world's
there?
knowledge.
Much of the world's knowledge.
It
Yeah.
in my hand.
It's kind of amazing. So
Shall
I'll
I
go
do
ahead
it?
and
Shall I ask
vamp while
Jeeves
you...
live? 'Cause that's
Ask
fun.
Jeeves. Wow, I don't think that there is anything that really shows your age more than the technology that you can reference, because technology is so of a time. There's very little technology that's still that spans more than 10 years. Most things come and go. So the idea of that brief moment in the, I don't know, mid-90s where Ask Jeeves was a thing. I love it.
Ask Jeeves. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So this is from Wikipedia, which is a source with no problems whatsoever.
Exactly.
So the Catherine wheel or breaking wheel is an instrument of torturous execution originally associated with Saint Catherine of Alexandria. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How neat.
Yeah.
Well, I love it.
We're not
going to Catherine wheel for me now.
Yeah. We're not going to describe how it works. You can look it up.
Okay, because we love you. All right. So, Noelle, what is your favorite part of Never Leave Me?
Ooh, I think it's Spike defining his terms.
Yeah.
I have come to redefine the words pain and suffering since I fell in love with you.
Oh.
Romance, everybody.
It is very romantic.
No, but I love that whole thing with Buffy and Spike. They have gotten so much more interesting to me recently. Spike trying to sort out all of his feelings, I think, is my favorite part.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I got distracted there for a little bit because there is a cat that is sneezing behind me.
Delightful.
I think she's okay now, but she's my old blind arthritic cat, and so she needs to hang out in here with me while I'm
Oh, buddy, never leave me.
Never leave me. All right, so my favorite part of this episode, I think, is just that moment in the basement with Spike and Buffy, and she says, "You're alive because I believe in you."
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool. I love that so much.
If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, follow @Chipperish on Twitter and use the hashtag StillPretty. Or as a Patreon supporter at any level, you can join the Chipperish Discord group and chat live with other listeners and the hosts.
Patreon supporters are getting exclusive content like Let's Watch Roulette, where Ian Martin from Passion of the Nerd and I react to a randomly chosen movie or TV show for $5 and up supporters, while $10 and up supporters get to attend show recordings live. And we have a whole bunch of people with us right now, and it is so fun. You guys got to get in on that. We've also got a new stretch goal. Once we hit 500 subscribers, I think we're at 440 something now, we will unlock the monthly Chip Chat, where I will host a private 1-hour Zoom call open to every supporter to talk about whatever. And my sneezing cat in the background I will have her with me as well, so she can Zoom with you guys.
Welcome to Still Kitty, a podcast from Chipperish Media, where...
Kitty. Oh my God, I love you so much. So if you haven't pledged your support yet, now is the time.
Speaking of supporters, this episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish Media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now. So thank you to Abby, Alice, Christina, Erica, Jonathan, Kevin, Kristen, Rose, Sarah, Shelley, Stefania, and Stephanie. And this week's special message for our power producers: my harbingers have a tendency to call attention to themselves.
While you're waiting for the next episode of Still Pretty, here are some things that you can do. Write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or prepare yourselves for the possibility that William the Bloody is back. We will be back next time with Bring on the Night, the 10th episode of Season 7. Until then, that is the worst attempted pig slaughtering I have ever seen.